But here we're talking about a very interesting guy from my perspective, Adair Turner. Unlike a Michael Hudson or a Joe Stiglitz or any of those writers who have written on the aspects of what the problems were, what are the technical problems of what we see here as something that caused great harm to the world economy. This is a guy who's equally facile as Stiglitz, Michael Hudson, and all the writers. He knows what went on. But also, he's an establishment figure. Lord Adair Turner, head of financial services in England one time, all the inner sanctum committees he's been on and adjudicating, working to minimize the damage from what happened in 2008 to the present. But better than that, he's the closest thing to a revolutionary who can't be a revolutionary. In other words, he has to he has to maintain his reality and credibility to people like us, saying, okay, we can't do anything about it, but at least let's acknowledge what the truth is. He does that, but he also makes this strong attempt to reform the system or suggests creative ways that he can minimize the impact of what went on. So this is a very adroit and sophisticated thinker, okay? He's not preaching outright revolution, yet he knows every bit as much as a revolutionary would know about what's going on here. He's got the confidence of the establishment because he doesn't threaten them with his solutions in any real major way. Yet he's able to maintain his credibility with a revolutionary audience because he's acknowledging what the problems are. He's a very sophisticated Obama when Obama last night went into his riff about what was wrong. And that's why this is a great book, and I'm hoping the course will catch that. Because I do believe that if a lot of what Adair Turner advocates was proposed or done, things would no doubt have been a lot better. Now, one of the interesting things, and really what made me do this book, is Adair Turner is the first mainstream guy, although Stiglitz and other people have become quasi-Georgists with the tax on real estate. He develops this as an overarching theme that real estate is one of the speculations, one of the big problems in this system, and that something has to be done about it. And he acknowledges Henry George is the first one to point that out. But of course, his solution would be make the banks not lend so much to real estate, make the banks increase their capital requirements, set specific limits on how much real estate you can have and how much you can borrow. Things of that nature. He's not approaching it on taxing real estate. He acknowledges this is a huge problem. In fact, he probably gives it credence. He has three factors that he discusses which are really right on. Three factors that have caused us to have the problems we have. So he boils it down to three pretty robust factors. The first factor he points out is income inequality. And he says income inequality causes problems because the people who have no income or little income are encouraged to borrow money to maintain the standard of living that they might have had if the economy was producing the jobs that it used to produce. So you've got this situation of, and of course, that leads to the second thing. He said the second big problem is the imbalances in foreign trade between nations. Some countries are positive surplus countries. Many countries like us are negative. And he says that imbalance causes capital flows. The negative guy borrows from the positive guy, puts it in his market, but it inevitably ends up speculating on real estate and not creating real jobs. And so this is another problems. So you've got the income distribution problem, you've got the balance of payment problem, which probably caused the income distribution problem in the first place. And then you have, when people do, the banks do invest, they primarily want to invest not in the real economy anymore, they want to invest in real estate. They want to invest in urban real estate, because urban real estate, more than ever, is taking on certain characteristics. It's becoming central to millions of people clustering for reasons of ideas, wealth management. Proximity into a big city draws your best and richest people who can create the most deals, who have the most amenities, and real estate is becoming a powerful drawer in of credit and wealth and speculation to be in these areas. It's only major urban areas in countries. But you could probably only point out 15 or 20 of them. And he argues that with the advent of computers and real technology, that so many people could do so many things in a close-in area, and this technology doesn't take a lot of money to invest in. These computers are cheaper and cheaper, and they depreciate very quickly, and so that it's a Piketty argument also. That capital doesn't take much to absorb. It hasn't got the absorption power that steel mills and all of that had, so that real estate more than ever becomes the absorption factor.
What do you mean absorption?
It takes any excess investment, the banks would rather see it against real estate, which is very predictable, rather than take a chance and invest back an entrepreneur who's in a Wild West internet business, a technology business, which may turn into a Bill Gates thing.
Right.
It may turn into a.
It's a risk, though.
But how many Facebooks, Googles? You know, there's 5 Apples. There are 5 or 6 that take up 90% of all that space. The rest of it is Wild West gun shooting and failures and all of that. Yeah. It's simply, if you want to preserve your wealth, it's better to invest in real estate. It's become a very clear thing. Now, of course, if Adair wants to stop real estate investment at this time, let's assume he makes it very difficult for people to buy real estate in New York City now. You know, you can't get mortgages, you can't get loans. What's going to happen to the real estate that's here already? Go right up even more. So the advantage to the people who are already in become greater and greater. And then everyone will get desperate trying to come up with the money to chase it. So he doesn't point that out, but that's the net effect of him saying, if we try to fix that by shutting everybody else out, it will really become scarce and desirable property to invest in. It'll draw most of the money out of the economy. The income inequality will be worse. Income inequality is worse. The people want to borrow money to steal to maintain their standard of living. You know, the big guys would still want to export the jobs of higher paying people in America versus lower paying people in Asia continuously. I mean, even now with this process, if the average American has dropped from a $30 a year, $30 an hour job in the old auto industry, he's down to a 15 or 14. He's still a Chinese who's up maybe from 30 cents to $2. It's still a big gap. Pressure is to outsource. You outsource, there's less purchasing power for Americans. Americans have to borrow one way or another. Now, as it stands right now, everything's clamped down. There's no real investment. The economy's been sputtering for 6 or 7 years at the same level. The government had to put $5 trillion of fresh money into the system on welfare and everything else to keep everyone right side up. But again, most of that money went into the banks, who would not lend it to anything other than real estate and financial speculation in the stock market.
Oh, they shut me down.
Well, it's pretty clear. I think we know from what we've been studying that credit creation, unlimited. They went, wow, but they could have monitored that. They could have made the banks carry heavy reserves. there was a lot of government controls you could have put on that excess creation. You know, you could have directed investment, you could have regulated it to the point where that excess credit really didn't do the damage it did. What happened along with that, regulation was dismantled. So you could argue the excess credit is the efficient cause here, but the deregulation that prevented any interference with that is also a cause. So the question is, who wanted deregulation?
The people that were benefiting from the excessive creation of credit,
Investment banks.
who have all the levers of power to begin with.
All right, but now he brings up a good point. How many people are familiar with the concept of efficient market theory? Is anyone,
Pricing.
what?
Pricing.
Kind of pricing. It's called the efficient market hypothesis and the rational expectations. And I'm very familiar with the work. A lot of the work basically demonstrated that behind everyone's back, that you couldn't make any money in the stock market because you couldn't know more than anyone else, and all this information immediately was found in the price of the stocks, and that if you were making money, it was lucky, or losing money, it was lucky. It was that the market was so efficient, with so many people discovering pricing, that it could not give you unusual profits. And that became a foundation for finance. The financial separation from economics was based upon that concept. It culminated in something you probably heard of, the Black-Scholes model, pricing model, option pricing model, where you could theoretically, if the markets were efficient, then they would have a probability distribution, and you could calculate for a class of securities the standard deviation and the volatility, and you could value it. It became something you could value and hedge against. You could offset the risk, and it was all mathematical, and no one had any edge, and you assume that markets, if left alone, would become efficient. And along about that time, communism collapsed. Now, what did communism portend? Rigid and controlled markets, central planners, people who try to make decisions absent the market. So when that collapsed, there was a triumphal reaction by capitalism saying, look, you working people, you were toying with the idea of communism. Look how poor they were, how inefficient they were. People were not working. They were pretending to work. They were pretending to get paid, and the whole system just fell apart from lack of motivation. And then obviously capitalism, with its price discovery, everyone Adam Smithing it in the market, is a much more viable system. Now, to a certain extent, that's obviously true. If you take away incentives for human beings, you know, invariably, if everyone's working at a factory and you have people who've got real ability going to get paid with the same as people who don't have as much ability, let's put it in terms of this. One worker can produce 10 widgets in an hour, the other can only produce 2. They're limited to that. But if you're only going to get paid for 2 and you produce 10, you'll soon stop producing the 10. And you'll produce two, and then you have your excess time because you're so efficient. You can play around with those freed up hours, same money, but you'll have more leisure time, let's say. So, you know, that kind of a flaw contributed to the fall of communism. It's like everything else. Everything can't be taken to an extreme or excess. So with that going, with the efficient markets concept in tow, it became very easy to believe. And a lot of these people did believe, not in a nefarious way, that the more freedom in these markets, the more productive you would be. So let's unravel all regulation. So the regulation wasn't taken apart because the Koch brothers were, let's get rid of this regulation. Oh, in a sense they were, but they were all believing this was a good thing. They also knew if you had money and you had a Wild West, you still retain your advantages. So a lot of this happened serendipitous. okay, that people did believe, academics did believe, that if you let the markets be free, and then in addition, if you could understand how to hedge against these markets with instrumentations like the Black-Scholes model to tell you where value is, you could create other instruments to take advantage, mortgage-backed securities, other instruments which would enable risk to be dispersed all over the world, price discovery to be better, markets to be efficient, and capitalism would be therefore much more efficient than it was. This was a story that was believed by academia, probably from 1970 to 1995 or 2000. Neoclassical economics basically has that belief built into its logic. So here you have theory that's not pointing you to a different solution than what you got. Rich people, hey, this is a wonderful thing, free markets, and given the fact that unlimited credit was in the wind because of the cutback from gold, I can borrow money to buy real estate in Manhattan and it goes up. It didn't seem to be so bad. The very fact that this does, as Henry George points out, if you take all that speculation and draw the money out of the economy, you're killing the economy for most everybody else. But that's kind of a indirect result that's hard to see immediately. So a lot of what happened was accidental. But a Goldman Sachs, and I hate picking on Goldman Sachs because in the final analysis, if we all went up to the Goldman Sachs boardroom and sat them down and said, do you believe that Adair Turner had it right? They would agree. Of course he does. And well, then why are you guys having so much fun with it? Because we can. We're positioned to do it, you know? And if you said to them, how come you're here? Well, we saw this finance was becoming bigger and bigger for whatever reasons, and our classmates from Harvard and everything told us to come into it. And we're getting monopolies on, you know, we have 5 banks that get a monopoly on a lot of these trades, government securities. They found that they can make a lot of money. Now, why would they be able to make a lot of money in addition to the debt, the money creation? Think about it. If you are living in the country and you have your basic needs taken care of, if you're halfway smart and you've got some excess money, you could go out and buy a boat, a set of water skis, a second home in the Poconos. You could do all those things. But if you're really smart and you're trying to get ahead, you're going to take your little pile of money and try to get into this game, the Wall Street game or the real estate game. So the rational thing for you to do is to get in on this game as best you can, because if you're spending that money as you get it, having a good time, you're going to end up left out. So the thing conspired to make all liquid monies come to Wall Street, and Goldman is just having a hell of a time. Now, if I said to the Goldman guys, look, I could pretty well demonstrate, although this is serendipitous, and you guys weren't evil, and you guys didn't make the policies here, because there was a lot of accidentalism that went into this. What do you think your rational behavior is in correcting this? And they'll say to you, I'm pretty sure, because they would understand the environmental arguments and everything else, they'll say, we don't believe you can turn this around. There's too much momentum in it, too many people have benefited from it, the inside state, all the people who are at the cadre level at the top 10% of the population are doing well enough not to gamble with revolution or anything else. And they hold the high ground. So Goldman will say, look, we know it's going to blow up. But look what happened when it blew up in 2008. Did you see the big short? Some of us people made money on this so-called efficient market. As the securities went up, we were selling these to dumb German banks, people all over the world. We were selling high risk, bad paper to everybody, and we were making big commissions on it. And then when some of our smarter brethren, who were demonstrated in the movie, saw that this was way out of hand and overdone, they simply decided to create instruments with Goldman Sachs to bet against this. So they're going to make it going down. And then when it blows sky high and they made it going up and they made it going down and the whole thing's going to unravel, the United States has to come in and print more money and paper the system up to prevent the whole collapse, and they have to give the banks the money, letting them start over again to do the same thing. Now I tell you, why would they change? And they would tell you they know this. This is not a question of perhaps a Donald Trump who doesn't even know what he doesn't know. I mean, Donald's a smart guy. He made it in real estate. His dad was a billionaire before he started, so he had a reasonable brain and he was able to do it. But he thinks because we're giving the Chinese better deals and we're not bombing out the Arabs and all that, that he could tighten up this game. He doesn't understand this game was designed to patronize the Chinese, patronize the Arabs so we could get their oil. It was a subtle mix, which is ugly to see, but done effectively by smart people. And Trump's going in, stomping on, I can change this. You can't change it because it was a good thing. So Trump doesn't really get it. Bernie gets it, but again, he's only appealing to a small segment of the people. So, and the Goldman guys, I'm sure, would say to you, we know all that. We know that it's fundamentally going to take us off the planet. But we are so far gone here, and the planet is so compromised, and we know people won't give up at any level what they have. And they're not going to believe any prognostication of the future. It's simply unworkable to change it, and we might as well have fun at the level we can have fun because we have all the money, we can get everything we want. And so we die, we're going to all die anyway. So I would argue that that's kind of the zeitgeist that you have here. So the question is Adair right on the things that caused it? Is Ron right that if money was the precursing cause of those three things he said? Is there anything that could be done about it? And the answer is probably yes. Will anything be done about it? The answer is probably no. What is the mindset of a Bill Gates, let's say? And I can't be sure, but I would just take the outside logic of it. He made the money, in his mind, fair and square. You know, he found the software company, and it caught on. The fact that it took on a real estate kind of a monopoly, first mover of that one system, everyone had to lock into it. But nonetheless, he feels he's a superior person. Second, he's given money back, he would say to you. What do you want from me? I make it, I'm not blowing it in nightclubs and everything. I have a sober attitude. My wife is like a pilgrim, you know, we're just serious people. And we give a lot of money away in Africa. We're trying to eradicate diseases. Now, for the average American, if you say to them, he's eradicating diseases, the average American say, that's a good guy, right? I mean, but he's eradicating diseases in Africa, which needs it, but he's not helping the Africans become self-sufficient or economically self-sufficient at all. He's just relieving obvious symptoms, which is a humanitarian thing in one sense, and good public relations in another sense. And his compatriot Mark Zuckerberg doesn't have the finesse of being giving money away like he does. I give it up, but I don't really give it. Blah, blah, blah. Well, let's take the American dollar. Even though, as Duncan shows us, it's printed almost in unlimited quantities now, and there's huge debts and everything, there is a certain value to the American dollar in that you have to buy your oil in dollars. Now, of course, the oil price is going down in dollars, so but nonetheless, there's a hedge and a marker and a value constraint built into that prevents it from becoming valueless. And if you have to take this dollar because we control the transfer mechanisms, all. If you want to do business, you have to pretty much take the dollar. You can hold on to that position a long time because you have the military muscle to put someone out of business if they won't accept dollars. Saddam Hussein found that out very quickly. So if the United States didn't have a dollar backed by oil and it was totally valueless, we might never have gotten to this point. But we have that. So I don't think that's going to be an unraveling so quickly. Second of all, the American elites are not national anymore. They may hang out in New York City, but they're all hanging out in you see all the elites from around the world, this is where they come to party, to have fun, and this is the last bastion. They figure this will go down, the last stand will be here. But all that money is sloshing around in other capitals of the world, and if one of the countries blows itself up, they're pretty much insulated to go to the other. It's international. They're not looking at this as a national issue. I mean, the American big money can be out of here immediately. You know? So the value of real estate drops for 10 years. Right. And they still own things that it goes down by 80%. They have the mere wherewithal to hang tough and to pick it up as soon as things come back to normal. The revolution is over. Nothing changes, they can bring it back up. Well, I only multiplied Manhattan by 10. Perhaps because of California and everything, it may be very easily 20 trillion. I actually calculated it. I have some figures. I made an estimate a few years ago. And I think I calculated not only with the land, but other forms of monopoly. For example, excess, not only the land, but for example, Wall Street is earning much more than it really competitively. It's a monopoly. The competitive returns are they're much higher than normal competition returns. If you tax a monopoly, you can tell a monopoly by the fact that it piles up cash and it can't reinvest it. I did a calculation that came out in 2010 that the citizens' dividend would be $6,000 per person. Okay?
Per month, per week, per year?
Per year.
Per year.
But that's a dividend in addition to the fact you can earn income and you don't pay tax on it. You can invest money and you don't pay capital gains tax on it. So the investment and the dispersion of the investment and the inclusion of so many people, like a monopoly, would probably create a bounty way more than that particular dividend. That dividend serves as a threshold, a savings account for everybody. Now we divided it by every man, woman, and child. What if we just said only working people? In other words, if you're a child and so forth, you don't get it till you come of age, and you don't get it unless you're working. Then you would double that dividend to 12,000 because only half the population works. Now, what do you say about people who can't work, or who have issues? They're crippled or sick. Well, then you can afford a welfare fund for the sick and disabled very easily out of something like that. But the productivity of the economy would be so great, the possibility of jobs would be so great that the value of that land and rents would probably go even greater. You would unleash so much productivity, and actually land rents are a direct function of wages and profits in an economy. If you don't have that, it isn't the rents drive that, it's that which drives the rents. The rents are a means to extract a certain percentage out of all the activity. It's got an extraction component. But 24 acres in the Mojave Desert, if you put a land tax there, you're not going to create New York. You have to have the conditions to create that. Well, with that, we're going to end tonight, and we'll pick it up.